Hello and welcome at IBC in Amsterdam. And with me is Evan Shapiro. He's a well-known media cartographer, I guess, a producer also of TV shows. And you run an excellent Substack and a newsletter on, where he's constantly challenging the directionless media giants. Is that correct?
I think that's incredibly accurate. Thank you very much.
All right. You said in your presentation this year at IBC that it will be a pivotal year. It will be a pivotal year marking the end of an era and the commencing of a new era. Could you maybe a little bit elaborate on that?
Sure. I think what's important to note is that we're in the new era. The new era started a number of years ago at the end or the beginning of the streaming wars, when everybody got into it and started to reorient their products around the consumer demands. It's just that what happened was lockdown and COVID really kind of obscured the change happening. Yep. There was all this great success of all these streaming platforms very quickly, but all those major media platforms entered those businesses without really understanding the fundamentals underneath them about churn and lifetime value and all, just frankly the pain of selling directly to the consumer, who is a very fickle, cohort that changes their interests and changes their inputs based on what content is coming at them. And so, really we ended the last era in 2019. The new era really started during lockdown and moving into this, and we're in this time now where the era went from top-down, gatekeeper-centric to user-centric. And you look at companies like Amazon and the New York Times, who already are built for this new era. They are thriving. Each has bumps here and there, but they're thriving in an era where all their direct competitors are really grasping for business models. Right. And so, in this new era, if you aren't building your platform around your users, you're going to be at a distinct advantage to all of those that do. And what that means is small publishers, small platforms are going to get consumed by the massive big tech players who almost always think about the consumer first.
Yep. If you look at how broadcasters, classical broadcasters, are approaching the problem of their own, building their own platforms, it seems like they're more or less copying what Netflix and all Disney Plus is doing or Amazon is doing without really understanding it.
That's correct.
What do you think will make what will be a distinction for them to focus on, besides, of course, being much more focused on the user? How could they differentiate as well from those big tech platforms?
That's the kind of weird paradox of this new era, is that the public service broadcasters in Europe is a good kind of example to look at. I think a lot of them fear the big tech giants, right? And they don't feel like they have any leverage over them, which is exactly the opposite of the truth.
They understand the user much better than they do.
Correct. And there's no way that these big tech platforms can survive without the content from the ZDFs and the France Televisions and the BBCs and the Channel 4s. Like, there's no YouTube without local content, right? There's no way that Apple can have a vibrant tech platform unless all the local publishers from around the world contribute to the platform. And so, yes, you have to keep those big tech collaborgators, as I like to call them, at arm's distance. You have to be afraid of them, but at the same time, you have no choice but to also collaborate, work with them. But the best way to do that is to understand what power and what value you offer to the ecosystem. There is no way that these American big tech companies can operate globally, efficiently, without the cooperation of the local language and local market broadcasters, and that's an opportunity.
But basically you're saying, don't focus on your own platform, go for the big tech ecosystem and participate with them? Or do they have a use case for themselves as well?
Absolutely, and in fact, that is the other side of that coin, is if you don't own your relationship with your consumer, if you don't have a direct, engaged relationship with your consumer, you're toast. Because the big tech folks are going to come in and disintermediate you. But you also can't abandon, I talk to a lot of public service broadcasters who have abandoned TikTok. Yep. because they're afraid that that it's not a trustworthy platform for their content, and they're afraid of being disintermediated by the platform. But what happens when you do that is you abandon those platforms to the bad actors, and then misinformation spreads. Plus, you're losing a generation of new consumers for your product.
Or you're making the market open for new disruptive services and disruptive content.
So it is a yes and, it is not an either or. It's very much more nuanced than, hey, I have to own all my, like the New York Times is again a really, really good example. Yes, they drive everything through their own platform. Their subscription product is one of the best in the world, and they also work with Apple News, and they also work with Google, and they also work with these other players. They do it well, but they understand what power and value they have.
They're investing also very heavily into games these days. Come in for the news, stay for the games. Is basically their slogan.
Well, and they again are I think best in class at the lifestyle bundle, super serving their users. So they understand their users. What the New York Times isn't doing is trying to get to 100 million subscribers. What they're doing is they're hyper focusing on their 10 to 15 million subscribers and super serving them. So they have this great lifestyle bundle where, yes, gaming, Wordle and crossword. Wirecutter, The Athletic. They're one of the best podcasters on the planet Earth. They have a great food product. They have a great, this is just a multifaceted IP lifestyle bundle. And that's how they talk about themselves too. Plus, all their subscription mechanisms are driven by this great machine learning, AI-based platform that enables them to create real intrinsic value for every subscriber in a different way. That's where we're headed. That's where we're at, actually.
Yeah, that's where we're at. But again, for the local news services or broadcasters, just copying the New York Times model will not cut it, I guess.
You're going to have to. It's bespoke.
Yeah.
The amount of change and transformation you need is going to be very different for you, for your company, than the company down the street, because part of this is also culture. One of the great successes that the Times had was hiring a bunch of young product managers and empowering them to make decisions without going all the way up the food chain. Well, that's a major cultural shift. Not a lot of companies are prepared to manage Gen Y and Gen Z and Gen A when they come into the workforce the way that they need to be managed, which is empowering them, because they probably know the audience better than the olds do.
At least the younger audience. Great. Well, thank you for coming here and having a 5-minute quick deep dive into how you view the challenging media business as it is. That's it basically for this show, and thank you for joining us, and have a great day, and we see you at the next interview.